Hello and welcome to Savage Universe Thursdays. I am J-M, and with me tonight we have Tracy Sizemore. Tracy, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me, GM.
Of course, I'm really excited to talk about all of the. We were talking before the stream went live, and we found out we had a lot in common, both writing background as well as a unique love of a specific genre of science fiction. But let's start off with, so you actually have contributed to a lot of PEG material.
Yes.
People recognize your name from Holler, Pine Box. We're going to be talking with you about your status as an ace.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start off by just saying, how did you get into Savage Worlds?
I got into Savage Worlds through Daryl Hayhurst. So
yes,
Daryl is one of my childhood friends. We knew each other, in first grade, and so there's a huge history there. I'm still very, very close with him. Obviously, I mean, I see him every week. We have lunch every Tuesday. We go up and game multiple times a week, and he was the one who introduced me to Savage Worlds. And at first, I was like a lot of people, which is like, this is weird, right? Like, it's different. It's I mean, I played Champions with Daryl when I was younger, when I was in like junior high school, right? Champions is a more traditional kind of role-playing game, right? But Savage Worlds was different for me, and I never really got into D&D. But at first I was a little bit, I didn't get it, and then over time I started to get it more and more, and now like I start to realize that Savage Worlds is deceptively simple. Like it's simple to learn, especially easy for people to like who don't play it. As you're a GM, you can introduce it to them very easily, but it's hard to master in the sense that there's a lot of stuff under the hood of these seemingly simple dice mechanics and how you play the game that can really unlock a lot of dynamic play. And so it took me a while, like a lot of people, to really get it. But that's how I got started. And then later I ended up meeting Shane. And then much later, I actually became friends with Shane. I'm a slow burn, right? So it takes me a long time. I'm not very outgoing, so I don't just go up to people and shake their hands and say, "Hi, I love your game." It really took a while, and it took a year and a half, maybe 2 years for me to become friends with Shane.
Okay.
And then I started writing and a couple of adventures. So I've got adventures out there, and then it all came, and Shane eventually asked me to do Holler. And then that's when I really started to jump on board.
Yeah. I lucked out because I was at a mutual friend's wedding. And the way they set up the reception tables was all of the gaming people were at one table. And so it was like my wife and I and Shane and Daryl, and just got to hang out and chat with them. But we also have a through line of Torg Eternity. You wrote one of my absolute favorite of the adventures. So I love horror. I love Orosh, probably second most of all in Torg, and you wrote The Trifling Matter.
I did, along with Brian Reeves. Yeah. So Brian was my writing partner there. We wrote it together. It's one of the things I'm most proud of, and I ran it for Shane and Daryl and our group here not too long ago, a couple months ago. Awesome. It was magical. Yeah.
That is, and that ending, without spoiling anything, like if you are a fan of Torg Eternity, chills at the end of that adventure. I'm
so proud of it because
it's so good. It's so good, and the spiders. I don't want to spoil anything, but I mean, there's a lot of Savage Worlds methodology, and as Cripwright said, the genius of the design kind of under the hood in Torg Eternity as well.
In fact, Torg was the one that was the system that inspired Savage Worlds. Right. So Shane worked for Torg way back in the day, and then he sort of like took that and along with other influences and sort of made Savage Worlds from it.
Yeah. But what you were saying about it's deceptively simple, it was also interesting. So I ran Torg on the Iconic Production channel for 4 years. And when I go from Torg to Savage Worlds, they're like people playing go, oh, this makes sense to me. I already sort of know how it works, but I like die mechanic, like the resolution mechanic. It's a lot. There's a lot less process in the moment processing you have to do with Savage Worlds compared to Torg.
Torg, it's its own thing. It has to be its own thing.
Yes,
and it's really kind of beautiful in its own way, but it takes a little bit of like there's a learning curve there.
Yeah,
right?
So I'm a big fan of like cognitive science and cognitive theory. And man, I'm telling you, like I have yet to move all of Torg from my System 1, where I just have to like slow down and think about it, into System 2. In Savage Worlds, it's all in System 2. It's like, oh, you need a 4. You have this penalty. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, but
I loved writing for Torg. Loved it.
Oh, I still write for Torg. I still hang out with Lehman and Mark on Saturdays and do the Delphi Council debriefings. There's a lot of mixture of people. I actually think when Daryl moved to Pinnacle, he said something like, well, we'll see you again sometime. And it was true. There are just these eddies and currents in the game design world that are pretty cool to be a part of.
Yes, exactly.
But you said you're doing writing, and yes, Landauer, that would be the word I was trying to avoid.
Yes, incestuous.
We're here to talk about you as an ace, because that's what Savage Universe is about. It's about signal boosting all of our licensees, and you have a jumpstart coming out. And I got to read through it. I'm actually a big fan of this genre. Tell us about the hand cluster. What is your elevator pitch for somebody who's never heard about this?
Okay, so Han Cluster is an optimistic human future where a strange discovery called the Drift has rewritten the rules of human interaction and connection, while also playing a mysterious part in the emergence of truly sapient machines. But unlocking the Drift has also awakened a hidden enemy that threatens to extinguish all intelligent life.
Yeah. So we got an existential threat. We've got some transhumanism, but also, at least to me, a little bit of a Roddenberryan kind of, hey, things could get better. Like we can lean into kind of our better angels and look at what the future could possibly hold for us.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like when I first wrote it, I was like, what if we took who we are now and advanced us, 600 years in the future? We developed hyperspace travel. We found a couple of planets that were kind of, star systems that were close enough together that we could travel between them within days. And we colonized those planets, right? And there's a whole thing there. There's a lot of history and there's a lot of stuff going on in the Han cluster. But one of the central conflicts is between Earth and the Han cluster. Earth still exists. It's consumed itself almost to death, but it's brought itself back from the brink of ecological disaster. They're not the bad guys, but they're also not really in very good stead with the Han cluster, the people in the Han cluster. So there's that conflict, but there's also, like you said, like I said, the existential threat of an alien invasion. Now, I don't want to go into it because part of the setting and part of the beauty of the setting is discovery. And I think that's part of the beauty of sci-fi is discovery. And so I leave a lot to question of what the Drift is, why it exists, how it exists, who made it, all these questions that are out there, in addition to what you can do with it and what threat might be behind it or run through it or whatever. All these things are mysteries to solve. And I think that's that's what I love about sci-fi, is that discovery, in addition to dealing with threats and that traditional Savage Worlds kind of play. Right.
Well, I mean, you got, I'm watching through Doctor Who with my son, and discovery and the things that humans get themselves into because of their sense of discovery. You go back and look at original Trek or Next Generation. there's a little bit of it in Babylon 5. I was talking about my love of Peter Hamilton, the Pandora star. That whole universe kicks off because of, hey, this star went out. Wonder why that is.
Yeah, wonder what happened there.
Yeah. It doesn't
Right.
end well. I mean, it ends well, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and my thing is, I believe in humanity. I'm a long-term optimist. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with me or not, I'm a short-term worrier, but a long-term optimist. I believe we'll figure this stuff out, right? And that is baked into the Han cluster setting. And part of that manifestation of that is we have a society where people go to work and go to school and fall in love and do all the things that you do as humans do. We've solved a lot of our socio-political problems, but we have new problems and new cultures to deal with and new challenges to face. And so because I want to kind of move past some of this stuff, I want to believe that we can move past some of this stuff. And we've got a society worth preserving, right? And this threat that's threatening us is something that we want to maintain, something we want to keep, something we want to fight for.
Right.
That's the opposite of like Deadlands and Shane's sort of his love. He loves to do this. He loves to just wipe everything clean, destroy it all. And then what does humanity do, right? Yeah. I'm going the opposite route, which is we have something that we want to keep, that we love, that it's important to us, and we want to fight for it. We want to keep what we have. And there's nothing wrong with either of those. But it's just it's the way I think.
Yeah.
Right?
No. All right. So Chucky T has a great question here. Can you tease an archetype or two for us?
I can.
Excellent.
Do you have the jumpstart available that you can share?
Give me a second and I will.
I think you'll be able to do it faster than me.
You were putting a lot of hope in me, proving that you're the person to write this.
Hope in you
to write this setting. Yeah, give me a second here, real quick. I'll get it pulled up.
Yes. So I want to do. Let's just go straight into the sapient AI, because part of the Han cluster is humans have been trying to create sapient machines, and I'm very, very specific about using machines actually, because AI implies like that there might be a program out there that you can that's out there, and that's fine. But in Han cluster, the sapient machines are intelligent, sapient intelligence with bodies. They must have some kind of body. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a human body. It doesn't have to be a robot body. It can be a lot of different kinds of things. But the mind-body connection is a very critical part of the Han cluster. And so in tandem with that is that there are sapient AIs in the Han cluster. They're called ghosted machines. And they're called ghosted machines for a reason. But they are formatively influenced by humanity. So I use sapient for a reason too, because sapient intelligence is human intelligence. It doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect. It means it's flawed. It's flawed in a human way, right? But there's something about it. I don't say soul, but there is something about it. And one of the archetypes is a sapient AI, a sapient machine, who looks human.
All right, which one do you want me to? Which one do you want me?
Let's do cicada. Cicada Lee, the sapient. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, the ghosted machine.
All right. Share screen. All right, we're gonna try this.
Okay.
It should be that one. All right.
Awesome.
Boom.
So Cicada Lee, she looks human. She's got the biocamouflage ability, which is something new in the Han cluster. It's a machine ability that basically means she's kind of like a Cylon, right? So in the sense that she's not obviously a robot. And it's so obviously not a robot that it takes a doctor a medical exam and a healing roll at a minus to discover she's not a robot, unless she takes an injury. But the point here is that she's formatively influenced by humanity. She likes humans. And one of her quirks, for example, is looking for love. And that doesn't mean necessarily romantic love. It could mean lots of different kinds of love.
Right.
But it's something that she finds fascinating and interesting, and something that she cares about, something that really does speak to her as a being who is not human, but kind of wants to be connected with humans, right?
Yeah.
She's also a pacifist. She's heroic, and she's a very, very nice person. She has luck, and one of my descriptions of the luck, my description of the luck is maybe it's your pure positivity. You get one extra penny per session. But in the Han cluster, there are things called drift ghosts, right?
Mhm.
So everybody has a drift ghost. Everybody has one. As soon as they unlocked the drift, everybody sort of manifested one. And mysteriously, the drift has played a part in the emergence of sapient machines, because machines that humans have created that are sophisticated enough, and no one knows which ones will or won't ghost, but they ghost. And when they do, they develop a sort of sapient intelligence, self-awareness, the ability to create their own sense of purpose, and they manifest their own drift ghost, just like a human has. And so what does that mean? Like,
Right.
How did this happen? What is going on? That's one of the mysteries of the setting. And it's something that you can play a sapient machine yourself, and you can ask these questions within the setting. The humans can ask the questions. There are organizations out there who are against sapient machines, ghosted machines, that want to kill them because they want to go back to what was before, right? There's all this stuff happening, and all these mysteries to discover and unlock. And in the meantime, there's all kinds of other things going on with some of the transhuman abilities that everybody has, that some people have. And then there's a couple of arcane backgrounds that are based on the drift that give you powers. So there's a drift diver, which is basically a spellcaster, right? And then there's drift coders, which are basically the weird scientists of the drift. So
Very cool.
All these things exist.
Do you want to show off one more archetype?
Sure. So let's do maybe, how about we do a Coral Regan?
All right,
She is 2 pages before, or a couple pages before this one.
All right. Everyone close your eyes as I scroll up. There we go.
So Coral Regan is a drift diver. And so she's got the arcane background. She can cast, we don't call them spells. She just has powers. Drift powers is what we call them. And drift powers are kind of, in a way, restricted, because they can only, some of them can only affect what I call uncarapace drift ghosts. And so everybody has the ability to separate their drift ghosts from their body in the Han cluster.
Sort of an astral projection kind of thing. Yeah.
Except that it's not a ghost
Right.
per se, it's actually semi-corporeal.
Okay.
So you can interact with the physical world as a drift ghost, but you take minuses based on how difficult that interaction is. So if you want to hit a keypad, you'll probably have to roll, but maybe not take a minus. But if you want to do a healing roll, you're going to take a bigger minus to do that as a drift ghost, rather than, as an uncarapace drift ghost.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, like, everybody in the universe can do this, can separate their drift ghosts from their body. But what makes it magical is that the heroes are drift bonded, which allows them to ghost travel to each other no matter where they are.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
They can take a limited action to say, I'm going to send my drift ghost to my drift bonded mate on Earth, even though I'm in the Han cluster, 3,000 light years away. Happens instantly. Their body goes to sleep, but their uncarapace drift ghost, which is semi-corporeal and has its own things and can interact with the real world, can be there with their friend almost instantly. And so the effect of this, in addition to them being able to telepathically communicate through their drift bond, means that table talk is absolutely a thing in the Han cluster. So people can say, what's going on, even though they're not in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of really are in the scene, because not only can they communicate with each other, they can ghost travel to each other and participate in that scene. And the jumpstart that's about to come out is all about this.
Yeah.
and how this works and how an adventure can be constructed around it, where people are ghost traveling all over the Han cluster to solve a cluster-wide crisis that only they are in the position to solve.
Well, I think that's really where. So we got a good question from Chucky T, but we're going to wait on that because I want to tease out this. So I think a lot of us are more familiar with Cyberpunk because Cyberpunk is sort of the genre that has jumped to the screen more than transhumanism. I think if you've watched like the first season of Altered Carbon, we're on that cusp between cyberpunk and transhumanism. But for me, the two things that really make something transhuman is this move toward or into a post-scarcity mindset, but also the separation of the conscious from the physical form. And I love this idea that Eclipse Phase uses it by you can data send copy your intelligence and type beam it to another sleeve somewhere else.
Sleeve. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But what I love about the drift is it actually encourages GMs to write adventures that require coterminous multi-point things to actually get things done. And I love that. So for you, what does transhumanism mean for you? What is kind of the defining bits that you really want to bring forth in your setting and your plot point campaign?
Well, what I want and what I think it does, and I it's part of my philosophy, right? I believe strongly that no matter whether I try to or not, who I am is going to come out in how in any kind of design that I do, right? But what I really want to impress on people is human connection, human collective consciousness. And I want to bring that not only up in your mind, but tangibly in the mechanics of the setting. And by that, I mean drift bonding, people who can ghost travel to one another, communicate with one another, right? And also there's a little bit of an aspect also of your drift ghost can look a little bit different from your physical body. So if you, for example, are a trans person or somebody who feels like they should have been born female, your drift avatar can reflect that, right? If you feel like, if a sapient machine who looks like a machine feels like they are moving more toward becoming more human, their drift avatar can reflect that as well. So it's little things like that, but the main thrust and the thing about the transhumanistic aspects of this setting, collective human consciousness, connection. We are all connected together. And I'll spoil my dedication in the book, right? Which I have to earn yet, but I think I'm getting close to. Which is for everybody who, no matter our differences and no matter how far apart we are, still believes that we're all in this together. This book is for you.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite quotes from Plato. Is that Plato believed that the only people who could actually remain alone in isolation were animals or the gods. That as humans, we are a social entity and we have to have these connections. And I even
go further than that. And this is one of the little secrets. I'll just spoil it. Just a little teaser. The drift and the human's interaction with it help us to discover that our connection with each other makes us a more powerful presence in the wider universe than we realize.
Awesome. Well,
that's what I'm trying to bring up.
I love that. I cannot wait to. Sorry guys. Part of the perks of the job, I got to read the Jumpstart. It's great, and I agree with everybody who is talking about how great the art is. The art is spectacular. In the background, you can see the archetypes. I am looking forward to running this for my group.
Awesome.
But Chucky T had this great question. So, what can you tell us about the drift? What does it look like when someone separates their drift ghost? What does the drift look like to them? What kind of, again, without spoiling the plot point campaign?
Sure.
what can you share with that?
Okay, so I can share some art for one thing, but
Okay.
for another, I'll just say when you separate your drift ghost, even before, since the drift has been unlocked, there is a dim blue glow to everybody. Everybody has a dim blue aura now. You don't see it in the art when they're just fully physical because it's just so dim that it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. But when you separate your drift ghost from your body, it becomes a blue semi-corporeal ghost. I've got, and it's not a ghost, but it's a semi-corporeal kind of apparition, right? And I've got some art, and I'll show it in just a second. But that's what it looks like. And sort of piggybacking on that is how different does your drift avatar look when you're in the drift, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing that's important is that physical items do not travel with you when you ghost travel or when you detach from your body. All your physical stuff is left behind. But another aspect of the setting is drift equipment, or what I call D gear, right? Yeah. Which is drift guns, drift swords, drift hoverboards, anything that you can use with your uncarapaced drift ghost, which is what I call a drift ghost that's separated from its body. That does travel with you. So when you ghost travel to another drift bonded person, all your drift equipment goes with you. Your physical equipment does not. So that gives a reason. Number one, mechanically, it gives you a reason that you have to actually physically go places to get things.
Not all gear is drift gear, right?
That's right. That's right. If you have to pick up something, if you have to go and get something and bring it back, you're going to have to probably go there to get it physically, or at least one of you is, right? But on a temporary basis, and even on a longer term basis, you can drift ghost to your friends or separate your body from your drift ghost and go there as a drift ghost and exist that way. There are disadvantages because your poor sleeper needs to be fed, it needs to be exercised, it needs to all that stuff, it needs electrical stimulation to its muscles or whatever you're going to do, because you are connected to your drift ghost. If your body dies, you die. If your drift ghost dies, your body dies. It's always connected. And there's no way to separate that. At least not yet, right? That may be a future ability that we unlock because they're still discovering things about the drift. But that's kind of the mechanics of it a little bit. Like I'm glossing over a lot of the details. But that's the mechanics of it. I'll show you.
And we got some great questions in the chat.
If I can move this to. Hold on just a second.
Take your time. So now I've got to wonder, so if our drift ghost is based off our mental image of ourselves.
The drift ghost, your drift avatar is who you truly are inside.
Yeah. So does that also mean, again, going back to our trifling matter discussion, does that mean that some people may manifest a more horrific or if they have self-loathing? Does that come out? Like, can we have villains that look truly terrifying as drift avatars because they see themselves as that's awesome.
Without spoiling it, there are villains who have embraced this existential threat that I've been talking about, that I've been teasing, right? Almost like cultists, right? They believe that this is the way. It's almost like a Cthulhu cultist. Like, this is the way. We need to embrace this because it's coming no matter what, right? Or maybe I will be, revered in Valhalla once the coming existential threat has come. That's right. Whatever they believe, it's completely wrong. They're the bad guys.
Right.
But they've been granted special powers and special abilities because of this belief and this worship that they have for whatever's coming. So that is one of the main enemies in the setting. Those are the intermediate enemies, and then there's the real enemy that you find later, right? So yes, that is all possible. That is all possible.
Can it change and morph as you play through the campaign?
So your drift avatar is this is important, right? So your drift avatar can change. First of all, there's the disguise power, which can only work on your drift avatar. And so it doesn't change your physical appearance. It changes your avatar's appearance, which is important, right? It can be very useful. But to change your avatar as a natural thing, you can make one sort of iterative change every advance.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad that you've thought about that like that.
Oh, yes. So it's not a character decision. This is important. Your drift avatar is how your drift avatar look is not just something that's decided by your character. It's something that's decided by the player.
Yeah.
Right. So it's who you are. It's not what you want. It's not what
sort
you
of
think or what you want to look like.
Observation on the character by
exactly
the player.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
And why that is, nobody knows.
That's right.
Nobody knows, right? But let me present some art here.
Yeah, let's look at some art and then we'll go to more questions.
If I can do entire screen, this one. So here, if I get this right.
All right, I'm going to add it to the stream.
Okay, good. Yeah. So
oh, yeah.
So these are two drift ghosts in the jumpstart who have ghosted to Onyx, which is one of the planets in the Han cluster. The little girl behind the woman drift ghost is her younger sister. She's drift bonded to her. And Edo Troke, who's in the foreground, is drift bonded to Coral, who's the other drift ghost here. So Coral has drift bonded to her, has ghost traveled to her sister, because her sister's in trouble because there's rioting on Onyx right now.
Yeah.
And then Edo has ghost traveled to Coral because he's drift bonded with her. And they are protecting her sister Wendy from rioters at this point. And if you look really carefully at this, number one, in the avatar art for Coral Regan, you saw a weapon on her hip. You saw some things in her pants. You saw a backpack on her back.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't ghost travel with any of that. And her drift avatar wouldn't bring that stuff with it, right? It would not project that stuff because what's important to her is obviously the clothes will come with her, but the stuff won't. But she's got her own stuff. She's got drift equipment. And I'll show another piece of art that sort of demonstrates that. And then if you look really carefully at the mugger who Edo Troke is kicking. He's kicked the gun out of his hand, right? Mm-hmm. There's a little blue glow around the mugger's hand. And it's there, trust me. It's just very subtle. But the idea there is that the mugger's drift ghost is inside him. It's carapaced within him. Edo is attacking the ghost.
Not the carapace. Yeah.
And I wanted to show that like a little glow of where Edo hit his hand to knock the gun out. Right?
Oh, it's awesome.
That's what it looks like. And then in addition to that, I'll show another one. I'll stop sharing for just a second.
Yeah.
And then I'll bring up another one.
John said it was a great adventure. Really enjoyed playing through that.
Yeah, John has played it. He was also one of my proofreaders, so he's actually read it too.
Awesome. Well, all right, while you're pulling that up, got a question here. Is there a point where artificial life that doesn't have a drift ghost can manifest one over the course of an adventure or a campaign?
Absolutely. Yes.
Awesome.
So ghosted machines, they ghost when, and this is one of them, right?
Oh,
so
awesome.
this is a ghosted machine. This is another archetype that I have not statted up quite yet. But here's another example of how the drift manifests in reality. Right. So this is a ghosted machine. This is the drift coder. So a drift coder is like the weird scientist, the Han cluster. The drift coder has, well, everybody has a little AI chip implanted in them called a Draxel. And the Draxel can do a couple of things. But one of the things that it can do is that you load code like programming lines of programming code onto the Draxel. That's kind of that's the equivalent. It's not exactly what's going on, but that's the equivalent of it. Lines of programming code can be loaded onto a Draxel and then manifest as equipment in the drift. And that's exactly what's happened here. So he's loaded coder gear onto his Draxel, which is sort of like located on his hip there. And that Draxel is then manifesting that code that he's loaded as a gun in the drift that he is now carrying.
Oh, that's awesome.
That gun represents some kind of power, right? So it could be a havoc gun, it could be a sleep gun, it could be a bolt gun, it could be a blast gun, but that's it, it's some kind of power, just like a weird scientist would wield some kind of device to do some kind of power, right?
Now, this is an archetype. This is going to be one of the available archetypes for players in the.
Yes, it's not in the jumpstart, but it absolutely is an archetype that will be available for players. And of course, I have full character creation rules that includes ghosted machines and how to make them and all that other stuff.
Very cool.
So yeah, that's another example of how the drift kind of stuff looks in the setting and how you deal with it.
Yeah, John, I'm right there with you. I'm like, I can't help it. I'm just like, this is great. Like, this is the type of sci-fi that actually gets me excited to run a science fiction game.
Yeah, and part of the challenge was to make sure that to sort of speak to the Savage Worlds audience, right? They're used to certain things, and I know what they're used to. I've done a couple of settings, I've written adventures for it, and all that stuff. And I'm trying to make sure that I retain my vision of optimism for the future, and in this human connection, this whole idea of human connection, while at the same time giving you plenty of stuff to do, right? There's plenty of stuff to do. There's pirates out there. There's people you can help. There's planets to travel between. There's a lot of stuff in terms of both enemies and connections to be made and mysteries to discover, right? Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that you felt like, okay, I've got stuff to do. It's not just an optimistic setting of the future where I want to exist in this setting. And I would want to live in this setting. But at the same time, that there's threats. You have opportunities to be heroes in this setting. Yeah. And there's lots of opportunities and lots of ways to do it.
There's something at the societal level that is worth defending, not just if we don't fight this existential threat, humanity is over completely. But like this is something beyond just our own individual lives that is worth fighting for. There's right. It's the Starfleet fights to preserve the Federation because the Federation is worth preserving.
Yes.
Now, granted, yes, every individual life, they would argue, is part of that, but also the collective is more than the sum of its parts.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. And for now, of course, there are no aliens in the Han cluster. There are ghosted machines and there are humans. Those are the playable races, but beyond that, there's you discover that there is an existential threat out there. You don't know the nature of it. You don't exactly know. There's a lot of stuff you don't know, but there's a lot of stuff to discover. And I think, and the people who have played the Plot Point campaign with me, and I've run it to completion once. I've run it to partial completion a couple of times. Loved it. Absolutely loved it in terms of all the stuff we've been talking about. In addition to some pretty cool and mind-blowing kind of really like true sci-fi that gets to the heart of that discovery and this, something more than just there's aliens out there and we need to defeat them,
Yeah. Well, all right, we've got a question from Landauer over here. How accessible is the drift? Is it one of those things, because it seems like one of those things that could really revolutionize what a civilization looks like when a majority of people can access it?
Yes, everybody can access it. Everybody.
All right, and it's just something that has developed because we hit this point.
You don't exactly know why.
Right, but it's connected to the cluster.
Know is that it sort of became unlocked for humanity when we arrived in the Han cluster.
Yeah. And
so everybody can detach their drift ghost from their body. Everybody. Every ghosted being is what I call them, whether it's a human or a ghosted machine. Animals don't have drift ghosts, right? And as such, they are unaffected by drift weapons, but that gets into a whole thing also. But any human and any ghosted machine, which only came about after the drift was discovered, can detach their drift ghost from their body. you can have the potential to become drift bonded, although that's very rare. And some people have developed powers like drift divers and drift coders. So in answer to Landauer's question, the drift is available in several different ways through Draxels, because there's Draxel Communications. There's a whole Reunia thing out there. I call it Reunia, which is basically a decentralized like crypto kind of thing, but actually works, right? So it's the idea is that money and credits and those interactions are decentralized and somehow handled in the drift. And so everybody has access to that. There's drift connected computers. There's drift nodes where this is high technology and rare, but drift nodes where certain people who are keyed to them can ghost travel to the nodes instead of having to have a drift bond, for example.
Right.
So everybody has it, and that was important to me too. There's a tiered system. Everybody can do this. Some people can do this. It gets rarer and rarer the more powerful and weird the ability is that it's possible for you to do. Right.
Awesome. Chucky T had a good question here. Are there places only ghosts can go? Like,
absolutely.
Awesome.
So I call them driftariums. So there are sort of constructed driftariums that were sort of made by what I call drift architects, which is sort of it's the pinnacle of the drift coder, drift diver tandem. So as you advance, so you can become a drift coder, have drift mastery, so you have both, and then after that you can become a drift architect, which gives you a whole new set of powers, and they're very powerful. That's veteran / heroic level, right? Probably veteran. But driftariums were created by a drift coder back 100 years ago or whatever, where only your drift ghost can enter. So they're used for training, they're used for virtual getaways, they're used for all those kinds of things, right? But in addition to that, there are natural driftariums out there that you can discover. Oh. They just exist. You just find them, and they're transient. So they'll go away. They'll come and they'll go. And when you go in there, there's maybe a risk-reward situation going on. So yes, absolutely, there are places that drift ghosts only drift ghosts can go.
Well, I'm excited, like I said, to play the jumpstart with my table. I'm really excited to see what more comes out when we get more of the cluster kind of accessible. Like I can't wait to write the article. It says the jumpstart is live on Savage Universe.
Me too. I'm. It's like J-M has intimated. It is written. It is done. I'm just waiting on a couple pieces of art, and a couple have been delayed. There's nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. So
Life
whenever
happens.
I get those pieces, it will go on to Drive-Thru RPG, and it will be available for free. So there's no paying. It's just a matter of saying you want it, right?
Yeah, getting the word out. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and if people like it, please let people know, because I want, what I really want is not to make lots of money. I want this out there and people playing it. I want my viewpoint on the world to be shared. That's all, really.
Yeah, I love it.
And then for now, though, there's yes. So there's a Han Cluster website. So just hancluster.com, and you can read more about the setting. I've got some additional materials there, so you can read the entire history of the Han Cluster if you want to. There's a drift glossary up there. So a lot of these terms I've been throwing around, like uncarapace and drift bonding and drift ghosts and all that stuff is up there and defined in a drift glossary for free on the website. And then obviously you can sign up with your email for a newsletter. It helps me if you do that. And it also allows me to communicate when the jumpstart is going to be released and when the Kickstarter is going to happen and all that other stuff. So if you want, please come.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on a Savage Universe Thursday when the Kickstarter goes live.
Awesome. And I imagine I plan for the Kickstarter to be late this year, but I don't want to commit quite yet. I mean, most of the book is written, but I've got a lot to do. There's a million tiny things to do, and I'm only one person with a couple of helpers. So we'll see.
Well, thank you for coming on and spending some time talking about this. Obviously, you are excited and passionate about this project, and it's hitting a lot of the notes that I love about science fiction as well. So really excited to see this coming out.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for coming and listening to me yammer on about it, because I love it so much. I love to share it with people. And I'm so excited that it's finally getting close, and seeing some of this art is magical to me.
There is something about seeing something that only existed in your own head on paper or digital file that is a truly unique experience.
Yeah, it's coming to life.
Right? Yeah, it is. And it's also cool when you get to work with an artist who can take those images out of your brain and you see it new for the first time as well.
Yeah. So what happens is you order the art and you think you've got what you want, right? And the artist comes back and says, well, and you go, wow, that's really cool. It is what I asked for, but it drives me in new directions, and it iterates the setting. So having art comes out, changes the writing, changes the art, changes the writing, changes the art. That's kind of the way it works. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful process.
Yeah. Well, for all of you watching, if you know of new Savage World shows, new swag products, are working on your own licensed stuff, send me an email. We'll get you on the show. I want to put more licensees on the show on Savage Universe Thursday so that you guys can learn about all of the cool products going on in the Savage Universe. Go check out savageuniverse.com. I just put up an article for a new swag product called Under the Skin. A small PDF that has some new spells, a new monster, and an adventure in it. We want to show off all of the cool products that are in and coming out from our great licensees. Like it's wonderful to see new products going up at least weekly, if not more often. So Tracy, thank you. This was a ton of fun. This is super inspiring for me. Like I cannot wait to play in this setting.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. It's a nerve-wracking time when you're creating something and hoping that people will like it. Yeah. It is you question yourself constantly. Yeah. And I do. And thank you for having me. Thank you for being excited. I'm excited that you're excited. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, we'll be back next Thursday. We're going to be interviewing Gage of Gaming with Gage. He does a Savage World adventure night every Monday night. If you want to be playing Savage Worlds, you can jump over to Gaming with Gage and get involved in their very robust offering of games. We have it on the Savage Universe calendar, but there are always more games coming out on Monday nights. You can jump on his Discord, and we're going to talk about what he calls Swan, Savage World Adventure Night. Every Monday night, somebody is running Savage Worlds, and you could be in that game.
Yeah, I know Gage.
Yeah, I saw it as I was looking.
I've run a couple of Swan games too.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and a good weekend. Get out there, throw some dice, get some Savage Worlds in.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.